All right. Welcome, everybody, to Bridges, Not Walls. This is the first episode of our Jewish Community Relations Vlogcast, I guess we're going to call it. And today we're going to be interviewing Pastor Manning right after a few messages from our sponsors. But first, we wanted to talk a little bit about what this is. So, Brian, tell us a little bit about what you see this vlogcast being.
Yeah, good afternoon, Brandon. I think that this is a good opportunity for the Jewish Community Relations Council to, more or less show to the public some of the work that goes on behind the scenes in terms of relationship building and really working with people of all different communities, different views, to really continue the process of emphasizing how important it is to making progress as we move along, and especially in today's divided, landscape. I personally believe the most important way to make progress is to continue to work together and keep building relationships, and that's very important to me. I know it's very important to this. The Community Relations Council, as it is a nonpartisan organization that really focuses and emphasizes these intercommunal relations. So I believe this just gives a really good opportunity to talk to important members of the community and really move forward with this.
Absolutely, and I hope that this vlogcast is an opportunity to share a little bit of the work that we get to do. One of the key sayings in the work of Jewish community relations and kind of the ethos of the work that we do is that, for the sake of the Jewish community, it's always better to build bridges than to build walls. We're safer when we're building relationships, not closing ourselves off or being isolationist. And our work here at Federation is all about relationship building and building across all kinds of boundaries, whether they be religious or cultural or ethnic or national. And we want to share this work with you. So we're in experimental mode today. This is our very first episode. But I thought we would start with just a little bit of a recap of what's happened over the past week. So that's relevant to our community. So real quickly, I'm going to share my screen here. So bear with me. This is new technology for me. Well, first and foremost, I think it's relevant to share that this week the U.S. Senate finally passed an aid package. Foreign aid package that would go to Ukraine and Israel, and also it adds nonprofit security grant supplemental funding that our Jewish community institutions and other faith institutions like Mother Emanuel benefit from. However, unfortunately, it's due to run into some problems in the House. So make sure you get in contact with your House member. So far, the Republican Party has been opposing it because it doesn't include border security measures, and some of the Democratic Party is not supporting it because it has aid to Israel. Interesting dynamics at play there. Also, it is worth sharing with everybody that this week, or a lot of presidential candidates are going to be coming into town. We're going to see lots of Nikki Haley, lots of former President Trump. And this is because the Republican primaries are on February 24th. And in South Carolina, we have open primaries. So it's worth noting you can vote if no matter what party you consider yourself to be affiliated with. If you haven't already voted in the Democratic primary, you can vote in the Republican primary. Also worth noting that these are not the primaries for local and state office. Those don't happen until June. This is just for the presidential election. But it's going to get crazy around here. Whenever there are candidates in town, lots of traffic, lots of lots of protests, lots of groups pop out of the woodwork and take advantage of all of the lights and cameras in action. So it should be interesting. Mother Emanuel got a little taste of that in the Democratic primaries when President Biden came to visit. Also, worth mentioning that here in South Carolina, medical marijuana passed the Senate. This is relevant to us because its champion was Senator Tom Davis. He's a Republican from Beaufort Hilton Head area who's also championing our hate crimes legislation. And like our hate crimes legislation needs, medical marijuana was brought up on special order over the objections of a couple of senators. So, we're hoping the same kind of maneuver could be used for hate crimes legislation. In addition, this week we saw the passage of constitutional carry in the Senate. It already passed in the House. The Senate has put its foot down, though, by instituting some additional amendments to the bill. And so far, the House and the Senate are in impasse. The Senate's added that there will be enhanced criminal release for criminal penalties for non-permit holders, for felons in possessions of a firearm, and they're trying to incentivize people to continue to get concealed carry permits. Also, wanted to share with you all that a bill that we've been talking a lot about, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance Anti-Semitism Definition Bill, it got a reading in the House or in the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee where it passed. Wanted to share really quickly that Representative Beth Bernstein was able to present to the Senate subcommittee, which was made up of a couple of local senators, including Senator Chip Campson, a Republican from Mount Pleasant, and Senator Dion Tedder, a Republican from Charleston, or a Democrat from Charleston. And Beth Bernstein actually references our federations in this moment here.
Identity. I have submitted as part of the record a joint statement in support from 10 different Jewish federations, synagogues, Jewish organizations across the state in support of House bill of the bill that we're debating today. It's considered the gold standard definition. It's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition, which has been adopted by our own State Department. It's used by the State Department under both Republican and Democratic administrations and has been adopted by 38 countries, 31 states, including Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, more than 300 institutions of higher learning, corporations, religious organizations, student clubs, political parties, and other groups utilize this definition. And
so this bill went on to get a favorable report from the subcommittee unanimously. Both Democrats and Republicans supported. It also passed the House last year unanimously. So we're optimistic that this definition will pass the Senate this year. If we are able to pass a hate crimes bill, the anti-Semitism definition bill will work in concert with that, theoretically. Really quickly, the South Carolina House this week worked on a number of priorities that are relevant to us, including a DEI ban that they're taking up. This is an issue that's been popping up in our communities as it impacts our Jewish communities as well. I'm sure we'll dive into that on another date. And then last but not least, locally, we have been combating, unfortunately, book bans that have been taking place at our local school districts. Most recently, here in Dorchester District 2, 500 books a list of 500 books were presented to the Dorchester District 2 School Board including a number of Holocaust-related books, and are being considered reviewed for removal from the school libraries. We absolutely oppose this kind of book banning, and so we actually brought a couple people to the local. We attended the local Dorchester District 2 school board meeting, and made it clear that Holocaust education was important, that history is important. This is my tweet from that meeting, and the ACLU was there as well. There are allies in the Freedom to Read Coalition and in the Pro-Truth SC Coalition. If you're interested in either of those, you should check them out, and we'll share links to those coalitions. And then last but not least, and then we'll get into the good stuff with Pastor Manning, wanted to share that last week on Friday, Michael Masters, the CEO and National Director of Secure Community Network, visited Charleston, partly because we are one of the best practices federations when it comes to institutional security. For those that don't know, the Jewish Federation of Charleston, along with the Jewish Federation of Columbia, employ a Secure Community Network regional security advisor to help with nonprofit security grant applications, to do security trainings for our congregants, to do threat assessments at our synagogues, and we've also provided at no cost to our neighbors in other communities his services, because as Michael Masters talked about in his briefing on Friday, we're only safe if everybody is safe, and we're only situationally aware if everybody is situationally aware. And this is certainly an issue that again that Mother Emanuel has some experience with. Obviously, they're also recipients of a nonprofit security grant this year that they will be implementing, and we are of course available to help. Brian was present at this security briefing along with our mayor, William Cogswell. We had Mayor Reggie Burgess from North Charleston, our local police chiefs, and a number of representatives and state senators. It was really an incredible turnout, and all of our rabbis and communal institutions sent representatives. Brian, did you have anything that you wanted to share that you took away from this briefing and breakfast?
Yeah, I mean, just again, it was not only educational to give details of what's going on to make sure everyone is protected and some of the processes behind that, but also how everyone works together to be able to ensure that everyone is safe, not just one community. And it was really nice to see that everyone had the chance to meet and emphasize that. So excellent overall event.
Yeah, I was personally really moved at the turnout. I think post October 7th, there has been a surge in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and institutional security has kind of risen to the top of our concerns. As it always is, but really even more so than before. And we're hoping to help our neighbors kind of step up their security practices. If somebody suspicious walks into the church across the street from the synagogue, it's important the synagogue knows, and vice versa. And I've had some conversations with Mayor Cogswell, our new mayor in Charleston, and our local police chief about how we can better communicate. So I'm hoping that we can create a network. But with that, I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk. And although there's lots of things to share, I don't want to waste any more of Pastor Manning's time. Today we have with us a very special guest. He is the Reverend at the Mother Emanuel AME Church. A lot of you are familiar with this church because of its incredible history, dating back to before the Civil War. They have been a church at the forefront of liberation theology, and really was one of the first churches in the entire country to look at the biblical text as kind of a resistance text, and relate the story of Exodus to liberation. And of course, people are aware of the hate crime that occurred at Mother Emanuel in 2015. And one of the things that Pastor Manning has done an incredible job at is really getting the Mother Emanuel Memorial Foundation up and running. They're doing an incredible amount of work that we can, I hope we can dive into today. But most of all, we are grateful for Pastor Manning's friendship and the partnership that we have and the work that we do together. And with that, welcome, Pastor Manning.
Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Brandon and Brian, for the opportunity.
Well, of course, I know we usually get to see each other at least once a week, or talk to each other at least once a week, but I'm glad that our community gets to meet you as well.
Yeah, well, the work that we have been doing, I believe now for, wow, it's hard to believe that I've been in Charleston for just about 8 years now, right? June 21st, 2016 was when I came to Charleston. So, yeah, it's just been a great opportunity to meet others within the community and to share, and to build bridges, as you so wonderfully shared earlier on.
Well, that leads really well into what I think is our first question, which is, we have all of these ways that we partner together, right? Through the Mother Emanuel Memorial Outreach Foundation, through our advocacy on hate crimes legislation. And I was wondering if you could share from your perspective what you see as like the common ground between Black and Jewish communities that drives you to want to build this bridge and partner with us.
It simply boils down to one word: history, right? And I think that's something that is getting lost in translation. Of course, when the NAACP was being formed, it was in partnership with the Jewish community. And early on throughout, I mean, you can go through all the history therein, even with civil rights, working through all of the laws that were taking place that were, of course, anti-Semitic as well as anti-Black, all of that throughout our history, and throughout the formation, as I said already, of the NAACP. So we have always stood together to speak out against all of the injustices that have taken place, that continue to take place. And I believe at times we just have, as I said already, I think earlier on this morning, we have a lapse of memory and we just forget. So I see it as one of my responsibilities to gently remind our communities and all communities that we have a track record of working together. And that's why, again, we have to always do our very best to continue to build bridges, irregardless of our socioeconomic background, our religious affiliation. Because as I said before, as I continue to say always, that there is more that unites us than that divides us. And what it requires is us doing the heavy lifting, doing the work, of course, of remembering, not following these blurbs of people who, come out and not have all the information that they need, as I have coined before as well, those teachable moments in which you're able to kind of come to the place of understanding that if we all work together, then we can make our communities better. So, yeah, I think realistically it's that big word, just history, just remembering all the things that we have done together and making sure that we continue to remind those others and then, of course, encourage others to look for ways to build bridges.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. And one of the reasons why I got into the work that I do is because of history. And I remember, since I'm sure my mother is somewhere watching this, that my mother said to me when I was very young, and talking to me about Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement, that you're a minority, Brandon. You're part of the Jewish community, but you get to decide when other people know you're Jewish. When you walk out of and Black people don't have the same option. They can't turn off their skin color when they walk into a room, and people immediately recognize that they're a minority, and they're not the only minority like that. And it's our responsibility to advocate for each other. So I still think about that today, and now they refer to that as white privilege, right? But that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
So, as I know that one of your jobs at Mother Emanuel, because you started after this tragic attack that rocked the church, that one of the things that you really had to do was absorb a lot of anger, a lot of emotion, and hold a congregation together when people were in disagreement or were upset at each other and felt different ways about like the direction of the future direction of the church. And I know that we always are going through that in the Jewish community, and especially with what's happening in Israel, and in politics. People are divided all the time, and we're always struggling to keep people in that big tent. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how you managed to do that, and maybe give us some advice about how we can kind of keep people together in times of turmoil.
Yeah, well, great question. I think realistically, one of the things that we must understand first and foremost is just give people space. Give them, and at times even validate their right to have a difference of opinion. And a lot of times what we fail to do is we fail to meet people exactly where they are. One of the things that I have tried my best to get right, and I will always share with people that I have made, I don't know how many mistakes, right? But I keep trying to do the right thing. And I think that's what we have to always keep doing. Look for ways to not rob people of their dignity, but to validate their thoughts and allow for them at times to have difference of opinion. So through the past almost 8 years now, I have continued to become a patient person. Some people say that I extend so much grace at times, but I do such because realistically, I know that what I may say or what I may do could spin people in a different direction. So I very measured when it comes to my words. I want to make sure that people understand that I have an opinion. At times I can be very opinionated, but I can learn from them. And I think that's something that's very important, right? As opposed to hurling insults like what we see sometimes from other individuals, we need to just be able to have the courage to just take a step back and say, okay, tell me what you think. I was watching the news broadcast this morning, and I was encouraged because there's a cross representation of individuals coming together finally to speak out against all this senseless gun violence, right? They talk about it, and they're coming from different parts of the community. And that is encouraging because it allows for us to see something that eludes us in this day and age, right? Because what happens is we become very opinionated. We then circle ourselves or keep people who share the same opinion with us right in our close proximity, and then we continue to spin ourselves up. Somebody else in a different area community, they begin to spin themselves up. Another person, another community begins to spin themselves up, and what begins to happen is we are no longer talking to each other. listening to each other. We are now yelling at each other. And then once we start yelling, then we become angry. And once we become angry, then we hurl various insulting phrases at other people who are created in the image of God, who bleed when you cut them, who still are breathing the same air that we are all breathing, who continue to have, at times, I would submit, some of the same goals that we all have. So when we fail to take the time, when we fail to be inclusive, when we fail to listen, then we, of course, are making our communities at that particular point a lot more vulnerable. They're not as strong as they could be. One of the things I always talk about is, as we were building the memorial, and Michael Arad did a fantastic job with the fellowship benches. And I became a quick student of how these pieces of marble had to be engineered to come together, and they cannot be off a millimeter of an inch. I mean, it's just phenomenal when you begin to look at it. And I begin to draw the parallel to our communities. If our communities are off, if our communities are not looking for ways that we can work together, then they become off, and then they become weaker. And subsequently, the same thing with the fellowship bench. If it's off a millimeter, it will not be able to stand. Same way with our communities. If our communities are not willing to work together, or not willing to find the commonalities, those places of agreements, we have, of course, then weaker communities, and then they continue to fall. They continue to fester, and they do not become part of the solution, but they continue to become part of the problem. So what we have to continuously do, going back to what I said previously, is to remind people, historically, we are all connected. There's more that unites us than divides us. But then we have to also, like I said before, create those safe spaces where people can articulate their differences. And at times, we must be able to absorb whatever negative energies, negative thought processes that they may hurl at us. And then we must be patient and respond in a gracious, loving, caring manner to help them understand that life is filled with teachable moments. And those teachable moments then allow for us, as I said before, hopefully to begin to build bridges, stronger communities. And of course, as we build stronger communities, then the sky begins to become the limit. So those are things that I think I've learned over the past 8 years. And it's no secret, my work with not just the community here, Jewish community here, but also with Rabbi Jeff Myers, and on the list goes on and on with the various communities that we have worked with. Because, as I said before, and for me, that's a key tenet. I think that when the heavy lifting is done, when the intentional work is done, we will always then uncover that there is more that unites us and divides us. But as I said before, it takes courage, it takes time, and it takes at times even renewing your mind and jettisoning the things that you may see, but then doing the right thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's for me personally. It's also, there becomes that giving space really hits me, because sometimes I'll see something where, like, the opposing side will be an automatic judge of your morality,
Mm-hmm.
because there's an overlapping political view over a moral issue, and you feel like your morality is judged. So that taking the space and the tipping point of when to respond, if to respond, is a balancing act, I'm sure, for many people. I know it is for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Brian, you're absolutely correct, because realistically, I think Brandon has already, commented that we had the president here a couple of weeks ago, and there were people on both sides who were pro, and there were people who were against. There was also a protest during his speech, and I talked about that, of course, in the beginning part. But there was recently, of course, an editorial that was written here in Charleston, and I traditionally do not respond. I think this is actually only my second time really responding, and I, in collaboration with Reverend Joe Darby, who is also another activist here, AME preacher, and he's been in Charleston a lot longer than I have. So he reached out to me, and I said, yeah, I need to respond, and so we responded together. And I think realistically, I call that a teachable moment, because a lot of times I always look and say, maybe you don't have all the right information. Now, of course, that then says what happens after you have given those teachable moments. What happens then if the person still does not change? I still believe that you should find the ways to kind of reach and do the best to teach. But again, as I've said, I'm not naive. I realize that at times people at their heart may still be angry, may still be upset, may not be able to see or have the desire to see where we are. But nevertheless, Brian, I digress. But I found that moment as a teachable moment to speak to a larger community, so that way they would understand that, no, we were not being taken advantage of. That you have to understand the history of the Black church. You have to understand what the history of Mother Emanuel is. It's been in existence since 1818. You have to understand the struggle that has taken place during the attempted insurrection with Denmark Vesey. You have to understand when we were told as people of color, Blacks, enslaved and free, that you could no longer read here in Charleston, that it was illegal to teach reading. Bishop Daniel Payne left and came back, of course, and as the bishop of the church, formed Mother Emanuel. Of course, it wasn't called Mother Emanuel at the time, it was called Emanuel. And the first pastor, Reverend Kane, was also then elected, an elected official. And we understand and we remember down through the history of Mother Emanuel, there have been several people who were in both politics and also leading the congregation, as most recently to our dear friend, brother, the Honorable Reverend Clemente Pinckney, of course, who was murdered here in this place. And I think realistically, when you begin to take all of that into consideration, then you say, oh, it makes sense. We get it. We understand. But at the same token, I saw it as an opportunity just to share with people. So I think you have to find those areas where the situation may dictate that you voice a teachable moment. And then there are areas where at times, not to be rude or to someone else, but sometimes you just can't argue with, or you can't, now don't use the term argue, you can't help people see your position because they have no desire to change.
Yeah, I can really relate to that, especially, with what's going on in Israel. A lot of the folks that I have deep personal relationships with out in the community who I know are passionate and driven by, they're coming from the right place and everything that they do. It has been very difficult to overcome those disagreements and still hold on to those connections that are outside of that area. I can definitely relate to that struggle, and I think your op-ed was a brilliant response. Since I know that we are running low on time, as folks have been telling me, they have shorter attention spans than I have things to say. So if you could share a little bit about the work that the Mother Emanuel Memorial Foundation Outreach Program is doing, and what your vision is.
Yeah, well, and again, Brandon, I thank you for being a part of the small group that we put together to really begin to build this outreach program. So, we deal with these 4 key tenets, and those 4 key tenets lead us to the place of building stronger communities, right? And realistically, even at times as painful as it is, we have to acknowledge that unfortunately we still live in a very racist society, right? So we have to acknowledge that. We have to understand that. And we can't necessarily, make it something that may be politically expedient one week by saying, no, we're not a racist country, to the following week saying, oh yeah, we do have racial issues. We have to remember that it is there. It is unfortunately in our sin nature. So part of the memorial outreach program is to, of course, first acknowledge that. And then we look for ways to continue to educate. We look for ways to continue to share. We look for ways to continue to grow. We look for ways to continue to have these, at times, challenging conversations. As I've already articulated about the fellowship benches, they are meant with a way that we have a conversation. At times, even challenging conversations, because if we fail to have those challenging conversations, unfortunately, at a particular point, somebody may become violent and then murder or kill someone else. But it also serves as a crossroads, right? A crossroads in which a time when people can make key decisions. Maybe they have come in one way, but now they're at a crossroads. How do I change? How do I become a better human being? How do I learn how to embrace others? And again, from a Christian perspective, we always talk about forgiveness taking place right there at the foot of the cross. So we understand that, and we do our best to make sure that is, of course, something that is not necessarily well, let me go back. It is, of course, a key point to understand why the families were, of course, able to forgive in that particular perspective. And then, of course, helping others to learn how to forgive as well and look for ways to work to improve our community. So the Memorial Foundation and its outreach program, I am hoping, will live long past my tenure as Mother Emanuel's pastor, as a co-chair of the board, and it will continue to realistically help communities begin to become stronger, help businesses, of course, do better work for all of their employees, not just, of course, one or the other, but to realistically build a better cohesive employee base, so that way their companies will continue to thrive as well. And hopefully one day we will have stronger communities. We will have better communities. I know initially when we were beginning the work for the Memorial Foundation, we said one of our missions would be to eradicate racism. And I had a conversation with Congressman Jim Clyburn, and he made a very accurate statement. He said, well, Reverend, I don't think we're gonna be able to do that, because realistically, as long as we are still, unfortunately, in the sinful nature, we are going to always look for ways to have one side against another. And I agree with him in that regard, but I still believe that we can make our communities a lot better and stronger. And recently I have been invoking the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's wonderful quote that we may have arrived here in different ships. As I continue to add, some have arrived in the halls of slave ships, some have come against their will, but we have all arrived to this country. And now we are all in the same boat together. We need to figure out how we are going to continue to work together. And I believe that the outreach program will be one part of the puzzle that will help us to figure out how we can work well together.
Well, I think I might be frozen. I think I might be frozen. But oops. I really appreciate the work that you've been doing. It's been an honor to be a part of it, and
thank you for everything you've done in partnership with the Jewish community over the past several years. Especially stands out in my mind post the Tree of Life shooting that survivors came here to Charleston, and I remember that you and the folks at Mother Emanuel hosted them and gave them really practical advice on what they needed to know as a trial was upcoming with a surviving perpetrator. And I know they really carried that with them, and that connection has endured over the years. And I know that there will be lots more work we'll do together on hate crimes legislation. And with my other screen popped off. And with that, thanks for being here.
No, thank you again for the invite. And, of course, as soon as you asked, I would always be here for you. So I thank you for all that you do. And I think I'm thoroughly pleased with our partnership down through the years. And I look forward to doing more work together.
Amazing. Well, thanks again. And right here at the bottom of the screen, if this is working correctly, should be a link to donate to the Mother Emanuel Memorial Foundation. If you thanks again, Pastor Manning, and we'll wrap it up here. Brian, do you have anything else to share?
No, thank you so much for your words of wisdom, and I love to see the communities working together, and that's just that's inspiring. So let's keep moving.
Well, thanks. And just so folks know, we are planning an advocacy day at the State House, March the 6th. We're hopefully getting folks from around the Jewish communities around the state to advocate in support of our hate crimes bill and a number of other legislative priorities. Right here, another banner. This is the link to contact your senator in support of the hate crimes legislation. And with that, wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Happy Friday. Hope that you go in peace and that we'll have lots more opportunities to speak to folks throughout the community, our elected officials and others, and share this work with you all. So with that, so long.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you,
Have
Brian.
a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.